NFC North battle on a Monday, and wasn't much of a battle at all. First quarter, Sam Darnold finding one of the top targets in the sport, and Justin Jefferson showing love to Randy Moss, the former Minnesota Viking. And later in this one, third quarter, Bears squandered a couple opportunities here, but this one out of reach after that one. Aaron Jones, 18 totes for 86 yards, and that score. Final score goes 30-12 Minnesota. The beat goes on. The winning streak continues. Bryant, McFadden, Emory, Hunt here to offer their thoughts. And let's start right there, guys. This is a Minnesota team playing with a lot of confidence. The opposition they faced in this one didn't have a whole lot of want to in it. Emory, what did you see in the execution for Minnesota?
They executed at the most important time. That was third down on offense. 50% on third down. A lot of it was due to their passing game. And so you saw the confidence for them wanting to throw the football, and they found success in the Bears secondary, despite the Bears getting pressure up front and starting to heat up Sam Darnold a little bit more. So they were able to find those passes that were 13 yards, 11 yards, 20 yards down the field, and were able to convert and stay on the field. And then we saw in the back end, Aaron Jones find success, weaving his way through the defense, just lockstep in unison with the offensive line, the blocking scheme. And so they were able to find those opportunities on offense to get them the points they needed to win this ball game.
And you talked about the situational moments. They were great in those said moments. 50% on third downs, 3 of 4 in red zone, compared to the Chicago Bears, 1 of 12 on third downs, 1 of 3 in the red zone. The Chicago Bears offensively only converted 1 third down out of 12 opportunities. That's losing football. And kudos to Brian Flores, because his defense was much better in this meeting compared to the first meeting in Chicago. We saw Caleb Williams having, opportunities to be successful. In tonight's matchup, no window of hope for Caleb Williams. This was a great game because you look at how the Vikings played with their food, to say the least, in the first half. They kind of got things going in the second half and looked more like the Vikings team that we thought we would see for 4 quarters.
Sitting at 13-0. We had a big turning point in this game, and for the Bears a second time this season. Around the goal line, it's the offensive lineman, Doug Kramer, coming in to play fullback. Yep. He was handed the ball against the Commanders in that heartbreaking loss. Haven't won since that game. In this instance, he's the lead blocker. Doesn't report himself eligible and played a position where you need to. So instead of 13-7 and in a ball game, you go back to 13-0, you end up putting a field goal on the board, you take points off of the board. It's just another microcosm of the shortcomings of this team, their lack of execution, Mac. But I guess I offer all of that to ask you, will this level of play cut it for Minnesota when they do start playing some real talent and maybe in those NFC playoffs?
See, that's the thing. When you talk about the National Football League in a game where one team is really, really good compared to another team that's bad, you expect to see style points. But in the National Football League, it doesn't work like what you watch in college football. Sometimes, especially against divisional opponents, it can be a very difficult 4-quarter game. Now, for the Minnesota Vikings, to your point, Joe, we saw some issues in the first half, missed opportunities. They were able to cash in on those said opportunities in the second half. And for Chicago, even though Chicago has a bad record, they're a talented team. If you look at their roster from top to bottom, if you just did a blind resume, you look at their players, you would say, you know what, this is a team that's a playoff caliber team. But unfortunately, they haven't been able to do so because of moments like you just explained for us. Those are losing moments.
Details.
You had an opportunity to go down 6 points. A real good drive led by DeAndre Swift. Unfortunately, extra lineman who came in to be a fullback. I don't even know why you put in full alignment at fullbacks anyway. They don't usually do that. You probably didn't even tell him he needed to report to the officials that I'm playing fullback. Yeah. So there's a lot of miscues that have happened with the Chicago Bears, and everything we've seen the entire season showed up in this game tonight.
To be fair, what was a pass game coordinator a month ago is now the head coach, who's also tasked with play calling, has been brought down from the booth and is now doing that from the sideline. Things are moving very fast for the young quarterback, and all that insulates him, Emory. If you're looking towards the Bears' future, as someone, you know where I stand on this matter, how should Bears fandom feel right now? Because at moments it feels like you're close, the roster's almost there, you need an offensive line, but the culture is so fractured right now. How far away are they?
I don't think the Bears are that far away, to be honest. I'm always going to be of the mindset that talent trumps everything. And the Bears, to your point, B-Mac, have a lot of talent. But you can also see where they need to improve in certain areas of their football team. But at the end of the day, this is the difference between good and bad teams are winning and losing. We saw the Bears, we talked about the third down offense, but also red zone offense, but also the penalties. The Vikings didn't play a clean game. They had more penalties than the Bears, but the Vikings being a good team, the emphasis on the word team, they were able to overcome the penalties, overcome the slow start, overcome all of the miscues, and got it together. To your point, Joe, about the culture, that's what's necessary. Hey, if things are going bad early, we can respond, we can overcome that. So that's where the biggest, change is needed for Chicago. Because even with this roster, if they had a culture, I feel like Chicago would be 9-4 as opposed to 4-9 or 4-10.
Well, that's where I disagree in terms of the Bears not being far away. I actually think they're far away, and here's why. I don't trust their masses to be able to identify the coach that can create a culture and bring that said coach in. Matt Eberflus. There was questions about Matt Eberflus becoming a head coach, but Chicago decided to go that direction. In the same year, the Minnesota Vikings brought in Kevin O'Connell, right?
You look at prior.
Before Matt, you say 2 weeks prior.
The Bears hired 2 weeks prior to Kevin O'Connell being hired in Minnesota.
Kind of moved a little too fast in that situation, but okay, let's move back. Before Eberflus, Matt Nagy.
Keep going, Mark Trestman.
Trestman.
Keep going, John Fox. We'll get to Lovey eventually.
Yeah, and Lovey is the only bright spot, and you ran Lovey out of town. But Lovey has been the best bright spot in terms of Chicago coaching, the Bears coaching, for an organization that has so much tradition. And I would say this, Joe, and you know more about the history of the coaching game with Chicago, but I would say Mike Dick and Lovey are the two most notable, consistent winning coaches in franchise history. And you look at the other coaches that they brought into that program as of late, since you fired Lovie Smith, it's all been bad. So what would make us think that all of a sudden they can find and identify that said coach that can create the culture that you talked about that's needed? Because there's no reason for this team to be as bad as they are record-wise with so much talent. So, I think they're far away until I see otherwise. And you're a fan. You talked about the coaching nightmares you guys have endured week in and week out, year in and year out. Do we think they're going to get it right?
It's hard to trust the fact that they will. George McCaskey, now the principal of that team, making the decisions at the top. And since he took over in around 2011, that is the lineage of coaching that we've seen thus far. For them to get it right this time, it is a franchise direction setter. Because you got names out there.
You do?
Vrabel, Johnson. Anything past that, you're probably being a little bit too cute, and everybody's talking about it being the opening. We'll see if it's true.
Well, think about it, though. You talk about Lovie Smith. When Lovie Smith was the head coach with Chicago, even going back to Dick, but let's just stick within the time frame of guy making the decisions. Lovie Smith, you knew what you were going to get from a Chicago Bears team. We don't know what we're going to get from the Bears under any one of those coaches that you named since Lovie Smith.
We got to get this thing moving. A final thought here on Minnesota. Real quick, just put them in order right now. NFC North teams, after what you saw in Week 15, Emory, how does it go when you're talking about Detroit, Green Bay, and Minnesota?
Minnesota, Green Bay, Detroit. Detroit because of the asterisk, because of the injuries, but Minnesota will be number one.
I'm right there with you. I'll go Minnesota, but slightly Green Bay right there on the heels of Minnesota. And even though Detroit, they're sitting at the top of their division right now, I think because they own the tiebreaker on the Minnesota Vikings, I would have them third by default because of all these injuries. The injuries are going to catch up. We saw that yesterday against Josh Allen. When you get closer to playoff caliber football, these injuries will surface. So right now, unfortunately for the Detroit Lions, I had them third in their division.
Minnesota trying to win that division as we move forward. Another victory, a winning streak alive here for the Vikings as they take down the Bears on Monday night. Here's a look at those remaining schedules between those three. 12-2, the going rate. I mean, you're 10-4. You're the Green Bay Packers. You could win a Super Bowl this season, and you're third in your division right now. They got the Saints, they got the Vikings, and then maybe just
that final week.
Agents of chaos there. The
Detroit, Minnesota, Joe. Final week.
Detroit, Minnesota. Could be the whole darn thing. Could be the 1 seed on the line in the NFC. That one going up in the Motor City.